What's up everyone, David here. We got a new video for y'all today. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any new videos. Because remember, new videos on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So don't miss out. Now today we're gonna be talking about quads, the big muscle in front of your thighs. When someone's looking at you, you wanna make sure you have good developed quads. It's gonna be a good indication that you do not in fact skip leg day, all right? Don't be the type of person where you wear sweats every single day because it hides the fact that your legs are small. That'd be me. I know my legs are a weak point, so I'm gonna use any type of tip and technique, any type of tricks to try to maximize the amount of growth I'm gonna be seeing in the muscles in my legs, especially in the quads. It's the big muscle in front of your thigh. It's gonna be noticeable if it's very well developed. So what are gonna be some of the things that you can do to help and build them up? Eventually, you're gonna get tired of just doing regular barbell back squats, okay? But what's another variation of squats that you can do to really help build them up? I'm talking about the hack squats. Now, when it comes to doing hack squats, all right, you're on the hack squat machine, it's not only going to be working out your quads, okay? We already know with a regular barbell back squat, it's gonna be working out your quads and your glutes. A hack squat machine will still work out those same muscle groups, but because of the fact that you're gonna be angled, it's gonna put a little bit more emphasis on the actual quad and a little bit less emphasis on the glutes. Similar to how an incline bench press is going to emphasize a little bit more of the upper chest compared to just evenly distributing the stress across the entire chest. So thankfully, RitFit, shout out to RitFit, they sent me a good hack squat. Ever since I started utilizing it, I've definitely seen an improvement in the size of my quads. I've also seen an improvement on the strength of my quads. But for the sake of this video, I'm not prioritizing strength, I'm prioritizing hypertrophy, making the muscle bigger. So follow me along. 3 technique tips, 3 ways to modify your hack squat technique to ensure that you grow bigger quads. First thing you should do is go ahead and lighten up the weight and prioritize going slow on the way down. Now again, big thing we're gonna be focusing on here is going to be the weight. You know your strength better than anyone else. You know how strong you are. You're using the same machines. You're going to the same gym. You know how much you can lift on each piece of equipment that you're going to be using to work out. For me personally, when it comes to my hack squat, I know exactly how heavy I can go on it. I know where my strength levels are. For example, right here, since I'm the one that uses this, I just go ahead and leave the weight on the machine. I have a 100-pound plate on here at all times. This is what I go, and then occasionally, if I need to go a little heavier, boom, I got the 25s right here, ready to put on here at the same time. Notice how I have no other weight around here because that is the heaviest that I will go. I'm not gonna be going and adding another 45, another 25, or any additional weight on top of this. Because if I do, then what is that gonna do? That's gonna affect how slow I can go on the way down. And for many of you, when you do your hack squats, you run into the problem where you think it's a regular barbell back squat. No one's gonna ask you how heavy you can hack squat. It's not like one of those big barbell movements like a squat, a bench press, a deadlift, where you can go heavy and people are impressed by how much you can lift. Granted, make sure you have good form if you are gonna be doing that. But when it comes to a hack squat, you're not doing it to build up your max strength. It's not one of those movements where if you're gonna be competing in powerlifting, you're gonna see who has the strongest 1 rep max in a hack squat. No, this exercise is meant to build up your quads, make them as big as possible. And one of the best ways to make them bigger, and this goes for any muscle group, is go slow on the eccentrics, go slow on the way down. The portion where the muscles are being lengthened, so in this case of a squat, any squat variation, but specifically hack squat, on the way down, take your time. Go slow and controlled. Feel the stretch in that quad. But the problem is, if you go too heavy, then you can't control it on the way down. And what oftentimes happens is you just load up as much weight as possible on each side of the hack squat. And instead of going slow and controlled, you just speed through, let gravity do all the work, and you just let it bounce off the bottom of the rack and then use that momentum from the bounce to bring it back up. There's no control there. Half of the range of motion that you're using to get the weight back up is not even from your quads contracting. It's not even from you putting out any effort. Half of that range of motion on the way up is just from what's carried over from that aggressive bounce that you used because it was too heavy and you just sped through the bottom. So again, you want to grow massive quads. You want to better utilize the hack squat. Go ahead and lighten up the weight and focus on going slow and controlled on the way down. Again, put your ego aside. It's not a regular barbell back squat. No one cares how much you can hack squat. People care about how big your quads are. Now for the second tip, we're gonna delve a little bit more into the range of motion. You heard me talking about the range of motion on the way down when it comes to going slow and lightening up the weight during the first tip. But this one's gonna vary depending on what gym you go to work out and specifically what model a hack squat they have, because every hack squat is built a little different depending on brand to brand and gym to gym. So when I use this hack squat, okay, no big deal. I'm gonna go ahead, unrack it. I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way down, slow and controlled, really maximize that stretch on the quad. And what happens? I go all the way down, and the actual sled, the portion of the hack squat that moves, actually hits the bottom. Now, is this necessarily a bad thing? Not always. It's not necessarily bad. If you run out of range of motion, if you have good ankle mobility, you can go all the way down. Okay, then by all means, go for it. And if the bottom of the rack it gets hit, okay, no big deal. Go back up and finish your rep. Now, where would this become an issue? It would become an issue if you're trying to maximize the amount of knee flexion. Knee flexion pretty much means how much you bend your knee on any given exercise, which typically when it comes to quads, any type of quad work, that's what you want. If you want to grow bigger muscles, then you want to make sure that joint that is being worked gets moved in the maximum amount of range possible. So if I'm working on my quads, what do I want? I want my knee to bend as much as it can, so that way my quad gets stretched out as much as it can. So therefore it leads to it contracting for the most amount of range as possible. So let's put it this way. If my quads were only to go up to here, what's gonna get me more results? Just doing squats up until this point where my knees are barely bending, or squatting all the way down, maximum amount of knee bend as I can while still maintaining good form. Do not force any excessive range of motion. If it causes any type of pain, discomfort, it just doesn't feel right, then don't force it. You don't want to injure yourself. But if it's okay with you, all right, then by all means, then go all the way up. Which one of those do you think is going to get you more results? Obviously, it's going to be the one with the most range of motion. But that's the thing. I didn't stop because that's all my knee bends. I didn't stop because that's all my ankle mobility allows me to go. I stopped because that's all the machine lets me to go. So when it comes to just these small little techniques, it's the little things that can make the biggest difference. So what can you do? Find ways to modify the machine to increase the range of motion. So what do I do for this? Well, it's quite simple, really. I went ahead, built myself a little platform, just roughly like 2.5, 3 inches, put it right here, and then boom, now that elevates me a little bit more, so that when I go ahead and do my squats, I can go ahead and go all the way down. And look I'm still not touching. I can even do a couple of pulses. My hamstrings are literally right up against my quad. I physically cannot go any lower. My knee is bent to the max, and I still got enough room to play around with. I'm not restricted in my range of motion, so therefore, boom, ideally, theoretically, it should lead to more results. So again, if you want to go ahead and maximize the amount that your quad could possibly grow, find a ways to increase the range of motion, which typically, when it comes to machines, that typically means you're going to have to try to find a way to either put some type of platform, some type of plate, just a couple inches here and there, whatever you got to do, just try to find a way to keep the sled from hitting down here, because that's going to hinder your range of motion. Again, never let the machine and how much you can move be the limiting factor when it comes to your gains, okay? Try to find ways to modify it. The only thing that should be keeping you from going down lower is your body's own natural mobility. And even then, never force it. If you feel some type of pain, your knees can't handle it, then by all means, don't do it. Do some stretching at the end of your workouts. Start prioritizing the mobility. Over time, your mobility and your flexibility will improve. If that improves, more range of motion, boom, more gains. And lastly, we're going to be going over your stance. Now, your stance will also play a huge factor in the amount of range of motion that you can go up and down on the actual machine. Now, depending on where you've put your foot placement, it can either lead to growing bigger quads or developing some type of lower back or knee problems. You got to take the time to actually figure out what your natural stance is on the machine and what feels comfortable for you. Same like when you do a barbell back squat, you take the time to figure out how spread apart your feet should be, how pointed out your toes should be. The only difference is, when it comes to a barbell back squat, you kind of know where your feet go. They get lined up directly underneath your hips because you're standing up in a straight line, you're upright. But since you're angled here, there's a little bit more free play of where you can put your feet, whether you be a little bit higher up on the pad or a little bit lower. But the thing is, it's not like a leg press where depending on where you go higher or lower, it's gonna prioritize one muscle group more than the other. No, we all know on a leg press, the higher you put your feet on the foot pad, okay, the more glute is gonna work. And then the lower you put it, the more quads, and that's fine. But if you have that same mentality on here on the hack squat, although to a certain degree, yes, it will apply to the same rules, a little bit more glute, a little bit more quad, because of the angle of the machine and how much pressure you're putting on your joints, it could lead to some type of lower back problem or some type of knee issues. So here's what I want you all to take into account. If you put your feet a little too low and you try to force yourself to go as low as you can, number one, you're probably gonna be limited by your ankle mobility, and you know you're limited if your heels start coming off the pad like this. But another thing, if you try to force yourself to go lower on the pad and try to force your body to go down as low as you can in a deep squat position while maintaining your heels on the platform, then what's gonna happen? Some type of joint is gonna have to take all the impact, and it most likely is gonna be your knees. Like even right here, the fact that I'm forcing my heels to go down and stay on the pad, but I'm still forcing my knees to go forward because I'm trying to get in a deeper squat, I feel a lot of pressure on my knees. And the last thing you want is to blow a knee tendon or patellar tendon because you're trying to force your body to go into a position that it's not meant to do. So again, be real mindful if you're putting your feet a little too low on the pad. It is not a regular barbell back squat where your heels and your feet are directly lined up under the rest of your body. You're gonna have to move up your feet just a little bit more. But if you move them up just a little too much, then what happens? At this point, if you're trying to force yourself to go down low, then for some people, your hips start coming off the pad. So although yes, you did actually maximize the amount of knee bend that you have, you see my hamstrings again are right up against my calves. I got a lot of space right here. The back pad is right here, but my hips are completely elevated. So what's gonna happen here? Now we got the rounding of our lower back, and that's not something we want. We wanna make sure our entire torso from our hips to our shoulders stay on the pad. We don't want this gap right here behind us. So what you need to do is take the time and figure out, okay, this is a little too low, this is a little too high. Let's go ahead and meet right in the middle or somewhere within there where based on your anatomy and what feels comfortable for you, what's gonna make you feel better on the quads, figure out what that stance is, and then boom, now we're in that sweet spot. I can go low, back up, heels stay on the ground, no pain on my knees, my entire back stays on the pad. This is perfect. And again, if you're gonna be working out at the same gym consistently, you're using the same hack squat, then once you figure out what your stance is, you should know what it always is. Some of these pads, they have markings wherever you put your feet. Just figure out, like right here, I could see markings down on the lines. Or if I'm using this little elevated platform, all I gotta know is, okay, it is roughly this much from the top of where I gotta line up my toes. Any lower than that, okay, there's gonna be too much knee problems. Or if my toes are a little too high up, closer to the edge of the pad, then I know my hips are gonna come off. So again, once you take the time to figure out what your stance is, I mean, you shouldn't be having to figure it out again. Once you know it once, you know it forever. Stick with that stance, you'll see results. So there you have it, everyone. 3 tips on how to modify a hack squat to really build up those quads. Number 1, go slow on the way down. Prioritize those eccentrics, and the only way you could do that is by putting your ego aside, lightening up the weight, and actually taking your time, getting the full deep stretch on the way down. Second thing you could do is try to maximize that range of motion. You really want to get that deep stretch. Well, you got to find a way to really try to bend that knee as much as possible. Sometimes you might be limited by the way the machine is built, but that's okay. Try to add some pads, some plates, anything to elevate yourself a little higher. Get those last few inches of range of motion. Over time, that extra range of motion will really help you build up those quads. And then third thing, figure out what your proper stance is. A little bit too high and your hips are coming off the pad and you're rounding your lower back. A little too low and you're kind of forcing your knee to bend in a way that it really shouldn't. So somewhere in between, you really feel a good deep stretch in the quad and your range of motion will not be limited and you don't feel pain in the joints. Take those 3 tips into account and I'm pretty sure over time, if you stay consistent with everything else, your quads will start growing. So comment down below if this video was helpful and comment down below any other tips that you may have when it comes to utilizing the hack squat that can help people maximize the amount of growth they'll see in that muscle group. And also comment down below any other video suggestions you'd like to see me do, whether it be about mindset, motivation, nutrition, diets, workouts, programs, whatever it is, comment it down below. I'd be more than happy to help y'all out. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any new videos, because remember, new videos on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, so don't miss out. And then Instagram and TikTok, same thing. Be sure to follow me on both accounts. I put all my links down in the description below. With that being said, I'll catch y'all next time.